episode of the High Ground Podcast, and I am very excited. Today we are talking about the women of the Star Wars galaxy, and it's Women's History Month. I probably should have done this episode last week, but scheduling and whatnot. Anyways, it's gonna be amazing. I'm super excited because I have awesome guests, and we've done one similar to this before, and it was probably my favorite episode of all time. So, yeah, without further ado, we'll jump into this right here on the high ground. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am super excited. I have a lot of actually, it's been a while since I've had any of you guys on. I've had Tia and Migs on before, but it's been a minute. Benali and Danielle, first time coming on. But I am really excited to talk to you guys and hear your perspectives. So I want to start. We will go around and I'll have you introduce, who are you? Where can we find your amazing content? And let's talk about tragedy. Who's the most tragic character in all of Star Wars? Uh-oh, we lost Tia. All right, Tia's back. Anyhow, I'll start with Meeks.
Okay, hi, I am Fangirl Meeks. You can find me on TikTok and Instagram. I also have Twitter. But I feel like my main places, especially for content, would be TikTok and Instagram. And let's see. Okay, when I was thinking about this question, the first person who popped into my head was Jyn Erso, because I think, given her history, like losing her parents, one to unaliving and one to separation, and then being taken in by Saw Gerrera and trained like as a soldier, not as like a small child. I think she was like, what, 7 or something? And then being called his daughter and then being abandoned by him and meeting the family, striking up a friendship with the mother and a relationship with the son, and spoilers, losing them as well, and then meeting the Rogue One crew and kind of gaining trust again in her father, but then having like the leaders in the rebellion not trust her word and striking off on her own, and then coming to a tragic end in Rogue One. Like, I can never watch that movie and not cry my eyes out. So I would say the most tragic character for me is Jyn Erso.
Nice. That's a good one. See, that's not where my mind went. So I appreciate it. I love all the thoughts. How about you, Benali?
Hi, my name's Benali. In terms of where you can find me, I am actually terribly terrible at social media, but I am on Instagram at Benali12. And in terms of tragic characters, I mean, my favorite characters are pretty tragic. It's Obi-Wan and Leia. And I find that their tragedy is not the things that happen to them, but the way that they respond to those. So Leia famously loses her whole planet, her whole family, and instead is consoling Luke. Obi-Wan consistently keeps losing people, and instead puts that energy into helping Anakin, helping Ahsoka, the Council, the Republic. And I'm like, that's really sweet. But have you, I don't know, seen a therapist?
Very true. I love it. How about you, Danielle?
Yeah, hi, I'm Danielle. I'm written in the Star Wars on TikTok, written in the SW on Twitter, on Instagram, because someone already had my name. But when I was thinking about this question, I had 2, which are kind of probably obvious, but they're the most tragic to me. The clones and Ahsoka, because the clones just kind of never really had a chance to have anything other than a tragic ending, except for we get to thankfully see Rex and Wolf have somewhat of a happy ending that we know of so far. And then Ahsoka just had literally everyone in her life taken from her except for Rex. And then they separated for so many years before they got to see each other again. And it genuinely breaks my heart. And in spite of all of that loss that she had and having to come to terms with what happened to Anakin, she still has so much hope for a better future, despite the Empire and despite everything that she's lost. Yeah.
Yes. We love it. Also, I got a shout out in the chat. Mari J says the best ship is Obi-Wan and therapy. And how about you, Camilla?
Hello everyone, I'm so sorry I'm late. I was like, I'm ready for this, and then my boss was like, let's get on Zoom, and I said, okay. So, but anyway, I'm here, I made it. Hello everyone.
Yes.
What am I supposed to say?
I'm so happy you're able to make it. No, I'm just asking, who are you, where we can find your awesome content, and who's the most tragic character in Star Wars. But I'd be happy to come back to you and hit Tia first, all right?
I'm ready. I'm ready. Okay,
hey,
so
go for it.
My name is Camilla, obviously. You can find me on TikTok at @BoricuaWookie. And also I'm one half of the Open Circle Fleet with Beth, Skywalker. We provide good support for all of the people after these, Star Wars shows decide to break our hearts. Also Open Circle Fleet on TikTok as well. But also I have a Star Wars narrative podcast. It's called Beings of the Galaxy. It tells the story of different people in the background and how they are the heroes of their own stories. If you check it out, you will get to hear some familiar people, including Darth Chaco and Meeks. They are both featured in season 1. And then tragic character. So shockingly, I'm going to mention Padmé. I don't know. Is Beth here? Or no, excuse me, Brooke. Brooke sent me these beautiful earrings, and I just got them today.
Ooh.
And so,
shout out to Far Far Away Factory.
Exactly.
Amazing gear. Check it out. If you want to be sad.
Yes, exactly. So yes, I got those today. I was like, perfect, Brooke, thank you. I'm gonna put them on right now. Anyway, the reason why I'm gonna say Padmé is because kind of Queen's Hope, but you got to read that so you know. But then also because of the fact that the way that her story ends has nothing to do with like her own choices. It is like everything to do with like external things happening to her. And I mean, I think that's something that happens just like with a lot of women throughout Star Wars, is that like things just happen to them, tragic things happen to them, and they don't ever have the chance to combat those things happening to them. So I think women are generally very tragic characters in that sense, but like specifically Padmé because of what happens, and then also like what Queen's Hope does to just make other things hurt more.
And
Nice.
and I think a big part of it could just be how a lot of these stories that are based on the hero's journey, Campbell famously said that women are the prize at the end of the journey and not like the characters in it, which leads to some pretty tragic stories. Looks like we're losing people, but Tia, Kari,
what's up, guys? So my name is Kari, aka Star Wars Tia on TikTok. You can say that, Choco. Star Wars Tia. It's okay. I'm Kari Skywalker on Instagram, and you can find me there. Silly Star Wars stuff amongst Marvel and other things. I do some like cosplay as well, and actually, I already knew if Camila was coming on, she was gonna take the person that I was gonna say. I was like, yeah, she's gonna say it, but to me, it's also Padmé. It's just not. I don't want people thinking that they need to pity her because of how everything ended with her. She was strong up until the end. She never faltered in that, and just people kind of trying to take advantage of her generosity, of how big-hearted she was sometimes and everything. And, and I guess that kind of happened with Anakin kind of doing that to her at the end, trying to lie to her about what happened while Order 66 was happening and stuff. But even though she wanted to believe what he was saying, she knew, what it was. And that's what one of the things that was amazing about her, that people always think, oh yeah, she was just like after Anakin simping and stuff. No, she had her own feelings and her own ideas about everything that was going on, especially with Anakin. That's why she knew that she had to go find them, in Mustafar, to try and get him back, because she knew that he was doing wrong. So I just don't like that a lot of people kind of still think about her like that, but she was strong till the end, man. Even though her story was cut short, so soon. But yeah, I love her, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sadly I'm not as far as I want to be in Queen's Hope, but I will be. I have a feeling I'll probably be finishing it this weekend. So
I'm getting my signed copy next month, so I'm excited. I'm waiting.
Camilla says, "Woman being part of the hero's journey. Everyone should pick up The Heroine with 1,001 Faces by Maria Tartar." I actually just finished reading that, I don't know, 2 weeks ago. But there's so many facets I didn't think about it, but I love the book really goes into just read it. It's very good. It's very good. It touches on a lot of things, but showing the different parts of how the purpose of these stories, where they came from, like the oral tradition, how they benefit them, how women are typically seen as when they are the protagonists, and how and modern examples that echo or turn it on its head or exemplify. There's so much in that book. I need to go through it again. And apparently JJ also has got it. Also, I gotta shout out Miss Eggy, because Miss Eggy's the best, is in the chat, shouting out Queen's Hope. Everyone on Behind the Music was tragic. It's Monty. Awesome. All right, so I'm super excited. Let's start by doing a quick, rapid fire, because we want to know, kind of get a base for your guys' feelings on Star Wars, and how you entered into the fandom, and what it means to you, type thing. So let's do a quick, rapid fire of how you got into it and what's your favorite area. Could be an era, could be specific characters. For me, my favorite thing is just the books, all the books. I put books over movies and shows and all that stuff, because I don't know, I'm a nerd. Yeah. How did you guys come into it, and what's your favorite area of it? I'll go to Daniel first.
Yeah. Well, I don't actually remember how I came into Star Wars. It's just always been there. My dad watched the movies when he was growing up, and I watched them with him when I was little. I don't remember the first time I watched a Star Wars movie. It's just always been there. But I did have kind of a break where I was just kind of a casual fan of it, not really super into it that much, until Rogue One came out, and that just flew me right back into the mix of everything, and that's how I ended up being here several years later. But yeah, I love Rogue One and loved the sequels. Got me really right back into Star Wars fandom.
I love it. How about you, Camilla?
I am relatively newer to Star Wars, in terms of the fact that quarantine and TikTok is what really got me into Star Wars, and diving in that way. And I rewatched all the movies before Rise of Skywalker came out, and then TikTok was like, you should watch Clone Wars and Rebels. And I said, okay. And then I got obsessed and started reading a ton of the books. And I am of the camp of, I'm the one who introduced I know a lot of people are like, my parents introduced me to Star Wars, but it's opposite for me. I'm the one who introduced my parents to Star Wars. Mm-hmm. So they are now fans as well. Was that it? Was that just our Star Wars journey question? I'm sorry, you're asking questions and I keep forgetting them.
Yeah, that was it. What's your favorite part of Star Wars?
Yes.
Favorite part of Star Wars. Thank you. It's women. It's just the women of Star Wars are my favorite part. It's hope and then women, and the two of those things go together hand in hand so beautifully. Because I think I know it's a fact. The women are often the vessels for hope throughout Star Wars stories. And hope is just like one of my favorite themes throughout any kind of media. And to see these women who I admire a lot, just constantly getting it done and doing amazing things, and also being bad and evil. I love when they're bad and they support women's wrongs and all of that good stuff. So yeah, all of it, just women.
Lorna D.
Yeah.
That's Lorna D.
We let men be bad all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Awesome. And how about you, Tia?
So basically, Star Wars for me started around when I was like 8 years old. It was my cousin, actually, my older cousin. He was a huge nerd. Like, he was from the streets, but he was a nerd too. So he had a balance there. And he sat us one day. He said, "Listen, we're gonna watch Star Wars. You guys need to get into it." And that was the original trilogy at the time. And since I saw Darth Vader, and I was like, wow, this is like the coolest thing in my life ever when I saw him. And it's always been a love of Star Wars, but I was never like, the way I'm geeked out, like the way I am right now. It was just more, like, okay, I love Star Wars and I love Darth Vader, whatever. Then the prequels came, and then Anakin, and, but it wasn't deep. And then quarantine, like Camila said, came through. And I was like, everybody's like, oh, Clone Wars and Rebels. I'm like, all right, let me do a whole rewatch in order, the way with the shows and everything. And that was it. Rebels became my favorite show. Kanan Jarrus became my favorite Jedi. And that was it for me. And then my favorite part of one of the biggest things that I love from Star Wars is the Force lore. Like, I'm obsessed. That's why another reason why Rebels is my favorite show, because it has such lore on the Force and stuff. And just because there's always something to learn. And now that I've read the High Republic, it's been like mind blowing, especially the more details, and the more we really get to see what the Force is like with these Jedi, and the different aspects of how they see the Force and all that stuff. It's amazing. So I love it. Yeah.
I'm gonna have to change my answer, because the High Republic has really it's taken me by storm for sure. That's my favorite. How about you, Benali?
So I actually got into Star Wars as an act of rebellion. My dad is a known Star Trek fan. He grew up with them. It was a big deal to him. My parents grew up in India, and so they would get reruns, and that was it was one of the few purely English immersive things. So it was a big part of his growing up experience. So then when I was born, he was like, "We're gonna watch Star Trek," and I hated it. And so I didn't like it. And instead I was like, let's watch this, because I picked it out the library, and it was Empire Strikes Back. And he was like, this is not Star Trek. And I was like, it has Star Wars.
Yeah.
I watched it. I fell in love. Han and Leia got me. But I didn't fully get into Star Wars. I got all the movies. I watched Attack of the Clones. When Obi-Wan does that thing on Geonosis and he stabs the thing, I think my brain chemistry changed. But I fully got really into Star Wars. I picked up the Revenge of the Sith novel. I was always a big reader. And so I picked up the novelization of Revenge of the Sith, and it was somehow this incredibly beautiful piece of literature about this dorky sci-fi show, a movie. And it's the thing that like really propelled me into Star Wars fandom.
I love it. Beautiful story. although I will have to, normalize, enjoying both, but yes, a very, very different vibes. I want to shout out Travis. Thank you so much for the super chat. Shmi Skywalker is the most tragic in my opinion. As a slave, gave up her son only to be ravaged and killed by the Tuscans, and the tragedy is part of what created Vader. Yeah, very true. Very true. Shmi gave up a lot, and Shmi is strength as well, because that's an impossible situation to be in. Also, random question to Travis: are you going to Celebration? Travis is a friend of mine. Anyhow, jumping back into it, Meeks, how about you?
What's happening? I'm frozen. Okay, I'm back.
Okay.
It was frozen. I couldn't get it to work. So I got into Star Wars. My first most distinct memory of enjoying Star Wars was, I just remember at my cousin's house on my mom's side of the family, we would play with lightsabers in the basement and we would watch the prequels. Because I think I was 6 when The Phantom Menace came out, and then 9, and then 12 for the prequels. And so childhood was spent smacking things with lightsabers and pretending to battle with each other. And I remember when the sequels came out, I took my younger cousins, with me to the theater because I was like, oh, this is fun, bonding experience with the family. And I fell in love with Rey and was like, okay, these are the best movies I've ever seen in my entire life. And one of the years that I lived in Spain, I went to the city of Sevilla, which is in the south, where they filmed part of Attack of the Clones. They filmed Naboo, and I made my friends that I was traveling with recreate a photo of Anakin, Padme, and R2D2. And I was R2, of course. And just with quarantine and 2020, I decided to embrace my nerdy side on TikTok, and it has brought me so much deeper into a love and embracing of all things fangirl. And I think my favorite area of Star Wars would also be the books. Just there's so much beauty and depth and character development that we get with books, and it has definitely been my comfort hobby through the last year, which has been really difficult for me in my personal life. So finding books that just bring me joy, and a lot of those have been Star Wars books, has just been an adventure in and of itself.
Awesome. And man, no, you guys, these past couple years of quarantine have been wild. And I always joke that now everyone's got a lot weirder, but then of course there's the realization no, we were all already this weird. We just hit it, and now we're actually being ourselves, and it's amazing. And I can't wait. I'm almost afraid to go to Celebration this year because I feel like everyone's gonna be so extra. It's gonna be the first time we've been out of the house, and it's among fellow geeks. Whew. No, it's gonna be wild. All right, so jumping into the topic at hand, and I want you guys to feel conversational. I'm gonna try to be mostly quiet because I think everyone would rather hear your guys' thoughts, but feel free to be conversational and jump out and share your thoughts. If you guys, someone's saying something, you're building energy off of them, go for it. But the question I asked is, who are your favorite, women of Star Wars, and why? What makes them such a compelling character to you? And I will just leave it out there if someone wants to jump out.
I love women, period.
You want us to choose?
This is such a loaded, I have a bazillion answers.
All right, well, pick one, and then we can all discuss that one, and we'll keep it moving.
I mean, I feel like you can't talk about women in Star Wars without starting with Leia, without starting with Carrie Fisher. And I talk about Carrie Fisher because I feel like a lot of what makes Leia so iconic is what Carrie Fisher brought into the role. Because let's be real, George Lucas's writing for Leia was very not great.
That was one of the
and
questions.
it was a lot of work that Carrie Fisher put into the role of really brightening this character. I mean, the reclamation of slave Leia to Huttslayer Leia. And so now that people have kind of taken that persona, and they're well, it was always like this. I'm no, it wasn't. A lot of work had to be done by women that were really victimized. I mean, if you read Carrie Fisher's book, I really recommend it. that was not a great time for her, and she instead took that like what she was going through and made this like beautiful character that like girls and women can still relate to so many years after A New Hope, and now so many years posthumously. And so, like, I remember I went to go see The Force Awakens. I went by myself because I was like, I'm gonna cry, and then I'll go with like other people. And when we see Leia, like, I like actually sobbed. I was like, oh my god, it's her. And so when it's like, oh, it's General Organa, I'm like, yeah, General Organa, and I love that. But she will always be Princess Leia to me. And like, I think we talk a lot about like the way we talk about traditional femininity. And I wish that we had still kept like the moniker Princess Leia, because there's nothing less strong about her being Princess Leia to then being General Organa. But I mean, I love both, so it doesn't matter.
So, you know, one thing I noticed, because I was doing my big rewatch of all of the movies, and one thing I noticed rewatching A New Hope is the only character to be officially named in the opening scroll of the main three is Leia. Han's name isn't in there, Luke's name isn't in there, but Leia is in the opening scroll. And I thought that was very profound for me because I'd never noticed that before. But the first movie of this big franchise, and it's Leia's name we see on there, not Luke's, not Han's.
Yeah. She was a princess like in real life too. Like, and some of her stories are wild. If you haven't read, you know, any of her books, I know The Princess Diarist was the last one, you know, before she passed away. But get that on audiobook because you're gonna want to hear her read it herself, and it's amazing. Have any more thoughts on that?
I just started reading Bloodlines. And I'm just like in I'm just in chapter 3, but whew, those 3 first chapters, Leia was like, I was like, dude, is this Carrie or Leia? Because the way that she was just like, you know, like coming out so strong and like so opinionated, and I was like, oh my god, I love her, I love this, and I can't wait to finish reading it. But that definitely is one of the characters. The books have her written really. I mean, that book starting right now has her pinned down the way that she's supposed. To me, she should have been more in the movies, you know, like even more free. And even though Carrie did her thing with George kind of limiting her, but that book already started strong with her, and I love it.
Oh man, that book changed me. I did not.
Oh,
go ahead.
I went to Galaxy's Edge for the first time this summer, and I was on Star Tours. And when they have, and it's not even Carrie Fisher, but when they have the Leia hologram, I cried more during that than I did during what is it? Rise. I was like, oh my god, it's Leia. And my brother's looking at me, he's like, what is wrong with this girl?
I also, while we're talking about books, I also want to say the Leia Princess of Alderaan book is also fantastic, and we get a really beautiful female friendship with Holdo and Leia in that book. So we need more. We need more of that in Star Wars.
Yes, absolutely. That book Bloodline like changed me because I never thought. I've always loved, you know, the character of Leia, but there was so much. I guess I had so many blind spots for the women of the franchise, and it wasn't until I read that book, and because I was holding off on it, I was like, you know, she's like middle aged and stuff. Like I don't know, that's not. That book changed me, man. Like it's incredible. If you haven't read Bloodline, please absolutely do. And also, I was gonna add, I'm not much of a crier myself, but the Vanity Fair photo of Leia with her daughter, I'm tearing up right now. Oh, yeah. Amazing.
My mascara is gonna run by the end of this, isn't it?
Talking about Carrie Fisher, I got to see her the few months before she passed away when she came to Harvard, and that genuinely is one of my favorite. It's my favorite Star Wars memory because she meant so much to me growing up as Leia, and just the way that she embodied the franchise and in her own way, and the way she cared so deeply about the way that the female fans felt about Leia and what she could do for them is just something that'll always stay with me.
Yeah.
R.I.P.
Mhm.
And the way she owned, because obviously the way she owned her imperfections was just like beautiful. And yeah, incredible,
Yeah.
incredible. All right, and Camilla, anything to add? I know you didn't say anything.
I'm just like, there's nothing more to add. I feel like everybody said so many amazing things about like Carrie and Leia and Bloodline. I read that book summer of 2020, which was a little too close to home. And
it hit different that year for sure.
It different. That's for sure. It hurt a lot. But yeah, it's like I mentioned earlier, the fact that like women are like beacons for hope constantly, and like who more so than Leia. And I think that she also embodies this, that like a lot of women throughout Star Wars sacrifice a lot for the greater good. And like you definitely see that in Bloodline, how much she has to because she's trying to fight for what's right, and she's trying to fight for the galaxy. And it breaks my heart, because I want to be like, why can't they have both? Why can't women have both? And I mean, that's something that we can talk about later. I feel like it might come up again, just like in terms of the way the women are written and things that are getting right and wrong and all that good stuff. But yeah, no, she's just like, she's such an inspiration. She's such a light. I love that she, yeah, like you were saying, Benali, about like Princess Leia, just because she's a general, like we shouldn't lose that princess title. And the fact that what's his face, the Santeca clan says like she's always a princess to me, right? Is that what he says?
She's royalty to us. Yeah.
She's royal to us. Yeah. And so the fact that I don't think 3PO ever stops calling her Princess Leia, but I mean that's just 3PO being 3PO.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the nuances of like the fact that women can be all of these things and more, and don't have to be just like put into one box. And I love seeing Leia being able to do that, and she's such a great example of that. And I want more women.
Awesome, beautiful. All right, so that's our thoughts on the Queen. Who else do we want to talk about? And then also, I want to add, I guess, a caveat, and you guys can toss us in or not if you like to. But I tried to make sure that we had a pretty wide variety in backgrounds, coming onto the panel. So I'm curious, for any other characters that you love, or being in the fandom in general. If there's anything unique, uniquely suited to you, or that really connects with you in a special way that you want to add into it.
I have one, and it's one of my favorite characters, and it's Lula Talisola from the High Republic. She's a Padawan, and she's created by Daniel Jose Older, and I was like, my guy, her name, there's no way this girl isn't Latina. And he was like, yeah, she's Latina, whatever. And there are so many things about her that, like, when I started reading about her, I felt so wildly seen in like a way that no other character in Star Wars has made me feel seen. And characters just in general, and the fact that like she is this young brown girl who is like, I'm going to be the greatest that I want to be. I am so ambitious. Like, I've got all this power. I want to be the best Jedi of all time. I care so much about my friends. Like, I don't want anything to happen with them. She deals a lot with attachment. That's like her whole entire arc, is that she's like struggling with all of that. And there are like little things about her that Daniel wrote in that were just so Latino, in terms of like, she wears a hair scarf when she sleeps, and she's the words that she'll say are like, she'll say like, ay mama, or like ay, which is like all these little like isms that are very, very Latinx.
Yeah.
So yeah, so in terms of like you were saying, chocolate characters that like really connected with us, yeah, Lula is like a really, really big one for me, because if I had a character like Lula when I was a little girl, there were a lot of things that I would have felt were valid about myself, and a lot of things that I would not have tried to hide myself and make myself take up less space and be less ambitious as a child if I had Lula. So Lula is like definitely a big one for me.
I want to add off of that and say that Daniel Jose Older in general, like when I saw that he was writing a book for Star Wars with Last Shot, I was so like filled with so much emotion, the same way I felt when I saw like when Poe was going to be, or when we had the character of Poe, or when Bail Organa, when I was watching Bail Organa in the prequels. If like we need more Latinas in Star Wars, but to have someone who understands your cultural background writing for Star Wars felt so significant to me, even if that's not necessarily, you know, in Star Wars. To have that representation just felt so, like I cried when I got his book, because I was like, this is the first time I've seen a Star Wars book written by a Latino. And it just meant so much. And I feel like he's done a lot characterization wise. You're right, Camilla, when it comes to that kind of representation on the page and in the universe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, like I'm South Asian, I'm Indian. And so a lot of Star Wars actually borrows from Eastern religions, and so a lot of times I'm like looking at the Jedi Code and I'm like, oh, I've read that in the Vedic texts. And so there's that. But it didn't hit me, like I was like, oh my god, she like actually looks like me. Until I was watching The Bad Batch. It was episode 1, and we have Death of the Lava getting shot down.
Well, yeah.
I was like, we get there and I was like, oh no. Like General Kenobi.
But she was awesome in the comic.
I was like, no, he hasn't. Go away. The Kanan comics, like knowing that so much of what made Kanan so good and his like understanding of the Force, he gets from Deppa. And that like last conversation, which like now is kind of retconned. Which is okay. I don't see much of a different like problem with it. But when Deppa's like, "Hey, your journey," when like if nobody answers, like in the in New Dawn, she's like, "If nobody answers, then you're gonna know what to do." Because he's like, "Well, what if nobody answers the holocron?" And she's like, "Well, then you'll know what to do." And then to know how much of like Kanan's motivation is Deppa, I'm like, "Oh, that's really sweet." And I wish that the first on-screen like, excluding season 7 of the Clone Wars, wasn't her getting shot down.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe we get some more in the future. I definitely hope so. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to see what we're gonna do with Reva going forward. Because yeah, Reva's already just a queen, and we never get, you know, like these black women villains, and in all honesty, you know, I know a lot of people say it shouldn't matter, and they're right, it shouldn't, but it does. Hopefully we get to a point where it doesn't, you know. But for right now, and especially depending on who you have behind the scenes writing it, there are just certain things that you would never think about, you know. And for those who have this is a little off topic here, but there was someone who made a video about, you know, being mad that white privilege was mentioned in the Batman, and I was just like, and I get it from that perspective, because, you know, if you're a fish, you don't notice the water around you, but, you know, if you're not a fish, that water is pretty ever present, and it's a kind of a big deal. It's something you have to deal with on a regular basis every single day, and others can go by and not notice it. Yeah, so it's just interesting. But yeah, I mean, you guys have more thoughts, more women who appreciate?
I think, like, kind of going off of that, the argument that a lot of people say is that, well, like, race or gender or sexuality doesn't exist in Star Wars. Like, those lines, that doesn't exist in fiction. And they don't. Sure, like, we can ascribe that like a certain coding onto a character or a certain like narrative onto a story. But yeah, technically, no, it doesn't exist. But these stories also don't exist in a vacuum. They mean something to the people that consume them. So for like, everyone's always like, people like to dog on Rey a lot, right? But right, it's not for you. It's for the little girl who's going to go see The Force Awakens for the first time. And she's like, oh my God, look, it's Rey. Like, I was scrolling through TikToks or something, and there was this like little girl who was like, she was like pretending to use the Force on like Galaxy's Edge or something at this like processional little parade that they were having. And so she's like Force just pushing all the stormtroopers, and then like the Rey performer comes up and she's like elated and excited, and that's who these characters are for. So when we ask for representation, it's not because we want to talk about race within the context of Star Wars. We want Star Wars to be a conversation about race or gender or sexuality.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
Yesterday I was just on TikTok complaining about the change to Kamala Khan's powers, and then I had a Boba Fett remind me of like, yeah, it's not for you, buddy. It was like, really? The show about coming of age as a Muslim American in New Jersey is not for like an adult man. Like, what? Okay. No, I
Oh my
get
God,
it.
she said, little brown girls from Jersey City don't get to be superheroes or something along those lines. And I cried because I am a brown girl from New Jersey. I was born in Jersey City. And so for me, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be a roller coaster. And then you get on Twitter and everyone's like dogging, and I'm like, come on, can we just like enjoy things for like 30 seconds?
Yeah.
When do we ever? Well, depends.
And like, that doesn't mean there aren't valid criticisms. I think that there are valid criticisms of everything. But I think when we like start nitpicking and then start vilifying people that like it, that's when we run into problems.
Yeah. New Jersey represent. Got Brian with the beard in the chat. I always appreciate it. All right, so we spoke a little bit about, actually, you know what? Let's dive a little bit into Rey, because I don't think she gets enough appreciation in the fandom. So I was waiting for you guys to spend more time, but I'm just gonna call it out. All right. Why?
No, go ahead.
Why do we like Rey, or what's special about or unique about her journey?
Meeks!
Can I go for it?
Absolutely.
Like, Rey, Choco actually helped me last fall when I came on the podcast and raised money. I was actually trying to get the jumpsuit Ahsoka, but I ended up, long story short, issues with the shop that I was trying to buy from, and I ended up buying Rey, Tross Rey cosplay, and putting that on was like the wildest thing I've ever done. Like, just the joy, and I don't know, seeing yourself as your favorite character, there is something incredible about that. And so to me, I relate so much to Rey, to like her femininity, her emotions, her strength, her compassion for BB-8, for Finn, like her hope for Ben Solo, her search for identity and belonging. There's something so beautiful about her story and her character development. And I literally cannot understand how people don't see it. I understand they don't relate. I understand that. You don't have to relate to every single character that everyone else relates to, but like being so, I don't know, just like unable to see the ways that her character blooms and develops and grows, and like seeing her joy at seeing the galaxy when she sees all the green, like that moment, just, I love her so much. And yeah, she just, like, her perseverance, like going through the trauma of her childhood. There's just so many things about her character that I love so much. I'm gonna shut up now.
Awesome. I love it.
Well, for me, it was, I say this in my rewatch videos of the sequels too, is that having a main female character, the main character of Star Wars be female when I was a child would have been like so instrumental to so many things in my life. And I still love that I had Leia, that I had Padmé, but having the main character be someone like Rey would have just done so much. And I can't help but think about the children now who have Rey to look up to, and who they're growing up with Star Wars. Maybe their first experience with Star Wars is going to be the main character being a woman, and that means a lot to me. And I just wish that people would think about that before they start attacking the character in such a vicious way.
I think one of the cutest things that like I remember is the Halloween after The Force Awakens came out. The amount of like little Reys trick-or-treating, I was with the little hair buns. It was so cute, and that's who Star Wars is for. It's for children. We appreciate it, we love it. We'll sit here and analyze it. I mean, Star Wars is technically for everybody, but it really should be geared towards kids. I mean, if you want the longevity of a franchise, you have to start appealing to younger audiences. And so when we broaden our scope for the amount of people that we take in for an audience, we just make it so it can extend longer. It'll outlive its current fan base, and like that should be a good thing. But I think people don't get that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's what keeps it alive. I mean, that's what it's just funny because we went through this already with the prequels, and you know, people were upset that there wasn't so enough prequel content growing up, and we've had to wait, you know, over a decade to get, you know, Hayden Christensen back into the mix. And you're like, this is why. If you just like let the people who this is intended for enjoy it, then maybe we'll get more stuff, and you know, don't do to the next generation what the previous one did to you. Yeah, we got to be better. All right, so before we move on to kind of like talking about the writing aspect and the behind the scenes aspect, let's do a quick round, and like we'll shout out who is like the underappreciated one, the one that no one ever mentions, that needs some more love or needs some more consideration. All right, I know I'm throwing an oddball at you. Does anyone have anyone?
I'm gonna say Jocasta Nu after, yep, because man, she was spicy in the freaking prequels and stuff, and we got like one scene with her, but in the comics, wow, like she was fearsome, and she was like nothing to play around with. I loved it, and you know, not too many people know about that because obviously it's just in the comics and stuff, and then we never spoke about her again like that. So, but man, I love that woman in those comics. She was like so badass.
Oh man, the Vader 2017 run, Order 66 happens, and then you know, Vader gets the Inquisitors, and they're like, all right, we're gonna have to pick our Jedi targets to go after. All their names are listed. Jocasta Nu's in red. Like, get this. Yoda wasn't even in red. Jocasta Nu was like, listen, she's too dangerous to be left alive. And you know what? They were right. Her cache of stuff is actually what helped Luke forward in the future. And yeah, there's a whole lot of connections there. But yeah. Who else do we got for our underappreciated queens?
I was thinking Senator Chuchi. She's so good.
She's so adorable. I love her.
I love Chuchi.
Always makes me smile.
I was gonna say Grand Admiral Rey Sloane, because we love to see. I'm just like, to see her constantly being like the only woman in a space surrounded by all of these men, and just like constantly putting them in their place. I'm just like, this is an icon. She's a queen. I want to be like as ruthless as she is, just like how in the Entertainment Weekly described Reva being ruthlessly ambitious. Like, I think that's also you could very much say that that's Grand Admiral Sloane as well, Rey Sloane. And oh my gosh, I hope we see more of her, because the fanboys would be unable to handle it. And I would love to see it.
I know you've read both, Camilla, but which one did you read first, Aftermath or A New Dawn?
A New Dawn.
A New Dawn. Okay.
Yes. But I mean, obviously, like, I fell in love with her definitely in like A New Dawn, and then obviously you get more of her in Aftermath, like interacting with all of these men, and her doing her thing. Oh gosh, she's so cool. So that's why I want to appreciate it.
Awesome, I love it.
I would say Satine, but without considering her relationship at all. I think when we talk about this character, we only ever talk about her in context of her relationship with Obi-Wan and dubious parentage and whatnot. But if you consider Satine as a political figure, she's the only character to win the Clone Wars. She keeps Mandalore out of the Republic's hands, out of Palpatine's hands, and she keeps Mandalore out of the Separatists through Dooku and then through Sidious, which is pretty incredible. It kind of sets this trend of Mandalore being really hard for the Empire to sink their nails into. For as long as she lives, Mandalore does not fall to Palpatine. And we talk a lot about how like maybe her pacifism wasn't great. She managed in one person's lifetime to turn Mandalore from civil war to economic prosperity, and it takes Dooku funding Death Watch to kind of put that into turmoil, and then it takes Maul funding Death Watch, or not funding, but supporting Death Watch to essentially microcosm the Clone Wars on Mandalore. And Satine, actually, she surrenders because that's what her people want. She surrenders to be captured, and she knows she's going to die, because that's what the democratic will of the people was. If you read like the junior novelization of that arc, she chooses not to fight because she's like, I'm not going to let people die for me. And so I think Satine and Obi-Wan are great, but for me, what makes her great is her politics, and her just unwavering, like, no, I'm going to do this. It's going to come, like, my love for Mandalore is going to come before all my personal needs, all my personal gains. And that's pretty great.
Damn.
I think, yeah.
That broke my brain a little bit.
Yeah.
She's the most successful ruler in all of Star Wars.
She is.
Sorry, go ahead, Danielle.
Oh, no, that's okay. For me, I guess I have two. Iden Versio, which I know that she's the game and the book, but I want more of her. First, because it's incredibly hard to go against your parents when you're raised that way. And it takes an incredible amount of courage and self-determination and willpower to forge your own path separate from that, especially when it's such a radically new path. And I love that about Iden Versio. I love her as an Imperial too. I would love to see more of that, but I do also love her as a defector. And then of course Rose, because I fell in love with Rose in The Last Jedi. She was probably my favorite character in that movie. And I just hated to see the way that her character just kind of was let down in many ways. And I think I really fell in love with her more in her one-shot comic for Heroes of the Resistance. And that really shows kind of the love between her and her sister and really dives deeper into her character. And I want so much more of that.
Yes. Ooh, I
Brooke
love it.
said Marin and Trilla, and I just want to like underscore that. They're so good. So good. The women in Jedi Fallen Order they're the best part of that game. And I stand by that.
Yes.
Here too.
All right, so I gotta run through this chat real quick and talk about because there's a lot of amazing people being mentioned here. Element 7 brings up Vernestra, Keeve, Lula, Zine. Absolutely, Rhonda brings up Mon Mothma.
Yep.
I think about the times like she's helped just random soldiers, because it happens both in in Lost Stars, as well as the first Battlefront book, where there's like soldiers being stupid or getting drunk, and like she's like help them stumbling around and stuff. Like, I don't know. Toes was supposed to be Rose. Monty has typing issues sometimes, which is okay. Padawan's podcast, Sabe, absolutely. Sabe is making a comeback, and she's really gunning for like my favorite character. She's just kicking butt. Ventress,
Oh, I love her.
Saj Ventress arc is so good. Let's see here.
Ventress has the best redemption story in Star Wars, and that is my controversial opinion that like always angers people. They're like, Anakin. I'm like, no, it's Ventress. It's Ventress.
I would agree with
Ventress
you.
she repented. She lived with her consequences. She was redeemed before you even read Dark Disciple. And I think that, and then everything she does after that is just trying to put into the world what she didn't get, which is just so good. And then she
I'm a
died.
Ventress apologist.
I support women's rights, but I also support women's wrongs. I love it. No, Ventress is great. Tam from Resistance, amazing. And I've been encouraging more people to read it, but if you read Alphabet Squadron, Erica Quell, like there's certain characters that have to live with their choices, and like they don't get an easy way out. They don't get to save their son in the with 2 minutes left and be like, "Yep, I'm good now," and you're like, "Damn it."
Also, Alphabet Squadron for queer female representation, and like for not cishet female representation, we have a trans clone in Queen's Hope. Yeah, which is just so cool because we're talking a lot about cisgendered women, but trans women are women. So
Absolutely.
Yes. I can't wait for everyone to read that book.
Yes.
I'm like, wait, I have to remind myself that I can't talk about it on here.
Literally.
I read it.
Now I'm curious who all has it, and we might have to make a separate like offline conversation.
I'm so good.
When I finished. But Lamasu Nalase, Maz Kanata, my grandma, I love her.
I don't know if you picked up on this, Danielle, and Thea. I don't know if you've read the High Republic Adventures, but going back to like Latinx representation and how Danielle sort of was like populating Star Wars with space Latinos, but Maz and Sav, just the two of them were just like, I was like, these are my aunts. Literally, like, I mean, freaking Sav is making a cafecito like in the beginning of her story. Living for this.
No, I mean just Maz in general.
Spot on.
Maz in general. Plus, we have a new Jedi that was like running around with Maz way back in the day, who's going to be a focal point in the High Republic and the next portion that comes. And for some reason, her name is not with me. Oh my goodness!
Is it not Sav?
Killing me.
Is it somebody else?
Yeah. Sorry, I was thinking Sav. I've different pronunciation in my head. My
bad.
Yeah.
Sav Milligan. Yeah.
But absolutely, Indira Stokes. We have lots and lots of awesome stuff. Jenny says Maz literally talks like my Tias.
Pelly and Fennec from Book of Boba Fett carried that show for me. So
Pelly, yeah.
Absolutely.
Some revelations I did not expect, but
All right. Well, okay. So, what's really the difference for you guys when writing, a female character versus a male character? And like, what's the difference? Who do how can we do better? You know, what have we done right, and what needs to be improved? Tia, sorry, you're muted, I think.
Can you hear
but
me?
I will say one. Oh yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. I said, don't do what George did with Leia and Padmé. That's the first thing that we need to discuss. Please don't, because he started off okay with in Phantom Menace, you know, strong. We see Padmé kicking ass, and she's being a queen and all that stuff, and then it's just gradually like we get to Revenge of the Sith, and I like to have my own idea of why she was, you know, she was pregnant and she was vulnerable and everything, but definitely it could have been a little bit better written by George. So.
I mean, there's no underwear in space, and the women just die, you know, and like this.
You know, I've seen people talk about this already, but it is really true that men not always do this when they're writing women, but a lot of the time, and I think we saw this in the Book of Boba Fett, is the idea of like what a like really strong woman looks like is 90% of the time always shown as someone who is just like physically strong, or like strong in the way that you would want to see that men want to see men strong, but not necessarily the way that it always can be. And so a lot of that depth that I wanted to get from like Fennec in the Book of Boba Fett, we didn't really get. And just, you know, there are different definitions of what is a strong character, and I feel like that hasn't really been explored in the visual aspect of Star Wars and the TV shows and in the movies the best way that they can. I feel like we got that a little bit with Rey, and we got it a little tiny bit with Padmé, not nearly as much as we could have, but I want more of that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to how active are women in stories, and how active they are as the characters. And what I mean by that is, are they making choices? Are they actively making choices, or do things just happen to them and they have to go along with it? Are they actively doing things that impact the plot and move it forward, or is it just, again, like, oh, this event happened and thus they have to go along for the ride? And especially like if it's in their own stories, I mean, it's like with both Padmé and Leia, like they were doing active things at the beginning of their arcs, and then were not at all toward the ends of their arcs. So that's like, yeah, that's something that I think a lot about. And I mean, like JJ mentioned, I say this all the time, that like, you want to write strong female characters, not strong female characters. If you can essentially just swap her out and like she's just a man, then like that's not a well written female character. And like Meeks screamed about Fennec like unendingly, because we love Fennec, and it's just like very frustrating the way that like her character was in the Book of Boba Fett falls into the trope of like, oh my gosh, she's like world weary and she's hardened by the world, and so therefore now she's like jaded. And this is like everything that like men have said to me about like why her character is good, is that like, well, she's like world weary, yeah, she's hardened by the world, and thus like she's not gonna be like this kind of very feminine person. She has to be this like badass, and that's why she's like not talking much, and that's why she's in the background. And I'm like, my guy, you are saying that like women can only be badasses if they're acting a very specific small way. And I'm like, that is not at all like the nuances of what it means to be a woman, and the fact that like often women are very masculine or they're very feminine, and there's no like intertwining of the two. And I think that another thing that the issues that we run into is that like a lot of these women, there's like an expectation placed on each of their shoulders to be the representation of women in Star Wars. And it's like, Padmé should not be the single representation. Leia should not be the single representation. Rey should not be the single representation. That's what we need. We need women who are like Padmé. We need women who are like Iden. We need women who are like Ahsoka. We need women who are like Bo-Katan, Fennec, you know, like all of these different women who are well-rounded in their own ways and completely different, because we can't just have one kind of woman, because there is no just one kind of women. Like there are 5 of us here, and we are wildly different. And you can't look at one of us and be like, we represent all women. That's ridiculous. That's stupid. And that shouldn't be the case. So yeah, it's just like nuance. And at the end of the day, what it comes down to is, are women involved in the creation of these characters? Are women in the room as these characters are being created? Are women running the show? Men have the ability to write women well. They do, but are they listening to women and speaking with women in there, or are they operating in a vacuum where they think they know best? And that's where it comes from.
Yes.
I love it.
Like, I think like Ventress, I think to me it's one character that because not only is she's like, obviously she's intelligent, she's strong, and she's sexy. You know, the way she flirts, but still has a menacing way about her. I like that, because there wasn't just one thing that made her like that. You know, Camila was saying it's just one way that it has to be. You know, she had a combination of these things, and I like that about, you know, the character, the way they did that with her, and then how she eventually, like Binali said, that she ended up changing her ways, and just the ways that she ended up redeeming herself and stuff. It was just I like that about how they took her character in that way.
Yeah, definitely multifaceted. Her stabbing the trooper and then kissing him made young Chaco confused.
Hello.
But Ventress is another character that is primarily written by women. Katie Lucas basically spearheaded Ventress's Clone Wars arc. And then in Dark Disciple, she passed the reins off to Chrissy Golding. And so I'm not saying that like only women can write women. I think that's really stifling. But if you consider like the psychology of, I'm gonna like nerd out for a second.
Please do.
Because this is like a personal interest. It's like the anthropology of like popular culture. When you write like a character that's not your lived experience, you typically write one of two things. You write like aspirational, like romantic partners from like a heterosexual, heteronormative perspective. So women write like ideal men, or they write fatherly figures, and men will write like the idealized female or motherly figures. And so when women, like we say that like women that write men, like I don't want a man, I want a man written by a woman. It's because it's the aspirational like male ideal, but because the way we've been socialized, female, like what we aspire to for like men is usually like it's more like compassionate, it's more internal. When men write female characters, they write like their like idealized woman is typically not more internal, it's more external. And that's why like we've ended up with this like historical trope of females being either like sex objects or like motherly figures. When you look at Star Wars, which is like this like textbook case, you're introduced to Leia, who is very much hypersexualized, and then that's like our only like female touchstone, other than like
Mon Mothma, who's the mom.
Exactly. But then like the better example is in the prequels, where you have like in Phantom Menace, you have this idealized like romantic partner in Padmé, and then you have Shmi, and they like represent two different things. And then you kind of separate women into those like two categories. And because that has been like the historical nature of women being written, because we didn't allow a lot of women to write their own characters, their own stories, that like now that's what we've socialized with female roles as. So even though we put women through the door, we're still kind of stuck in the same tropes. And so it's a very chicken and the egg situation. It's like, is this what we've always expected, or is this what we've written into the situation? And so I think like I always recommend, like when I write our friends, I'm like, you know, if you want to write something that is not part of your personal identity, but like sensitivity writers, sensitivity readers are great. And yeah, like you don't have to be a woman to write a woman, but you should at least like consult with one.
Which is what I'm trying to do for something I'm writing. But it's scary. It's
yeah.
It's
no, because we like what we see again. I'm always gonna go back to the High Republic, because High Republic is like peak reading, and we have all these, you know, male authors writing these female characters, and they're just so relatable, and it's so refreshing from what we've gotten, you know, with prequels and, you know, all the other shows and stuff. And these women are so relatable and so flawed, and it's how can I put this? There's no trope with them, you know, like, oh, this is a typical woman trope. No, we have all these different personalities with them, all these different ideals with them, and I just love that I know that this character I can relate, and I know this person will relate to that character, and she can relate to somebody else, because we have such a variety, and I love that about it, about, you know, the way that they have written the High Republic. You guys, if you haven't, anybody there, you have to get on these books. Absolutely.
So good. Chuck, I want to touch back to what you said about like how you were saying, I want to sharing writing with like women, and like it is a scary place. And it made me think that, like, I think for so long men have been, I know for so long men have been so in charge of storytelling. And when you look at the history of the world, like, it's only really recently that like women are being able to be in charge of stories, and their own stories. And I think that I would say there's probably a lot of like men who aren't willing to be vulnerable and to open up and be like, and ask for help from women, because for so long it's just been the norm, and it's just is what has worked. And so I think that, yeah, you raise a good point that like it is scary, and it is making yourself like very vulnerable, but it is like such good, important work, because it just makes your writing so much better. And it's like what more men should do, because it like will be a humbling experience to be like, hey, this character is somebody I really care about. Like, do you like this woman? Because I'm sure like a lot of men are writing women, and they're not writing like them poorly because they hate them. That's not what's happening. But it's like, oh, I wrote this woman poorly because I have a blind spot. And then I'm going to be vulnerable with myself and be like, hey, would you take a look at this writing? I would love to have a dialogue with you. I would love to hear what you're saying. And then like listening, and I know you've asked before, like, Chaco, how can like men be better? And in terms of like the writing space, it's listening, it's being vulnerable, because the fact of the matter is that like, if you flip the coin, there are a lot of people. I heard this said once, and it's something that I like to stick with. But like, if you have never been excluded, you don't understand the importance of inclusion. And in terms of like the very broad men writing versus women writing, the fact that a lot of like women have been excluded from the conversation are just like naturally always in a very vulnerable place. And so it's like, it's good work to be vulnerable and to put yourself in the shoes of like how women just feel all the time writing in like very heavily male spaces. And yeah, it sucks, but it's good work. And I applaud you for that vulnerability and being willing to share with women and hear what they have to say.
Oh, I appreciate it, but it's like the least of what I can do. But what's one thing that's interesting that like really that you know, the book, Heroine with 1,001 Faces brings out is how the oral tradition of storytelling is originally feminine, and these things that have been passed down for generations, and generations, were stories meant to teach people how to deal with certain aspects of life and different situations that can come up, and how all of a sudden it got trivialized and turned into, oh, it's an old wives' tale, meaning it was less valuable, and how like, oh, well, that's just gossip, which is only ever used as a term only used in context to women. You've never heard men gossiping, right? And it's I don't know, it just it's interesting, because I feel like at one point in time, that's where all of our stories must have come from. And I don't know, I'm still interested in diving more into, you know, the origins of that. So if you guys have more book recommendations to find that out, I mean, I'm all ears. But yeah, it's just fascinating. And now we have more people. Yeah, I think I'm going to coin the phrase that it's our water. You know, what is your water? What is the thing that your life experience has surrounded you with so much that you can't tell that it's there, but anyone else is like jumping in a pool, like, and they have to deal with it, and everything's more difficult. And you know, can we identify what that is? And then of course you have the intersectionality about it, and there's a lot of stuff to consider. But it makes for so much more interesting storytelling. You know what I mean? Like you read it and I'm like, I never thought about that. Go ahead.
One thing about, like, in my family, it's always been like the matriarchs, the one that would have the family stories, that they would be the ones to sit us down, like, oh, come here, mijita, and you know, let me tell you about the story of your great grandfather or your great uncle that this. But it's always the women, the ones that are telling the stories, you know, and that's something that I grew up with, you know. And then I do the same thing with my kids. I make sure and I sit them down, like, oh, you know, let me tell you about, you know, something that my mom told me about your great grandmother and stuff like that. But it's always the woman telling the story. They were the storytellers in my family. And that's something that, you know, I'm passing down to my kids as well. I want them to know that, you know, we have a voice, and we are fantastic storytellers, and we are fantastic at, you know, at telling something that society has said that it's mostly men doing it, you know. So it's just, I appreciate that we're having these conversations now, that we're finally getting to have more, you know, more women telling their stories, and, you know, the books and everything, you know, from their perspective. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love it. Well, what we've kind of talked somewhat about it, about some of the, you know, like, oh, okay, we're just gonna make him a stoic badass, and like we could I feel like, and some people just disagree with me, and that's totally cool. Like the season end of Mando season 2, we had all these women fighting together. It's like, I don't know anything about any of these people. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Casca looks cool, but I think she had like 4 lines. Like, you can't tell. So, are there any more common issues or tropes that need to be avoided? And then I'm gonna tack on to, and I want to get all your guys' thoughts. If there's something you could communicate directly to Lucasfilm, or, you know, whatever franchise you love, and then if there's something you can communicate directly to the fandom, and make them understand, what would those things be? So 3 questions total: common issues or tropes to be avoided, and then if you can communicate anything to the makers and to the fellow consumers. Hopefully that's not too much.
I think one of the tropes that we had before was about that. You know, in order to make a female character strong, it doesn't have to mean that she has to be a hardened, you know, soul and like just stoic personality. It doesn't have to be like that. You know, there's no reason that she can be both, like Camilla was saying before. Like, we need a personality. We need her to outshine and talk. Let her speak her mind, you know, and be witty and be funny, you know, not just, oh, I'm a badass here and I'm just standing and looking at you very seriously, you know. Like, we don't, that's not necessary on, you know, at all.
I think that the stoic female trope comes from that character is more palatable to male audiences than a traditionally feminine character, and that's why for like my entire childhood, traditional femininity was very vilified. For like, I can kind of point to like the dystopian fiction era on to like this like very not like other girl situation, and it's a patriarchal idea this like not like other girls, because that makes women more palatable to men. That makes these franchises more lucrative. So like the prime example is the Hunger Games series. I point to that, like I'm like I can point to that moment in pop culture as being the thing that like really flipped the switch for the things that were marketable. But it like they were very cautiously trying to make this character a character that appealed to men, because they were like, well, we need to bring people into the box office. And so like my I guess suggestion would be to like not worry. Women, we pay money. We will go see things. We will especially go see characters that like we think actually represent us. And like I think Camilla said this a while ago, where it's we shouldn't have to require female characters to choose. Like they should be able to be like career focused, but also be like happy in their domestic lives, which is why like I personally think the best written female character and top written characters in general in Star Wars is Hera Syndulla, because she effectively gets both.
Yes.
I mean, if you ignore Jedi Knight, but even then, like yes, spoilers, Kanan dies, but the like when you watch the Bad Batch and she's talking about how she's like always wanted this like family, she like looks at Clone Force 99, she's like, you know, like that's what I want. And then you think like she's like on the Havoc Marauder, and like you think of like Rebels, and she has like the ghost and it's all full, and at the end of Rebels, yes, the ghost is now empty, but she still has pieces of that family. She's going to have that forever, and so she still gets to keep her family. And if you like read Alphabet Squadron, which like everyone should, Hera is just like, this is not a, oh no, did I spoil it? I just saw the comment come up.
No, he's messing with you, you're good.
But if you read that, like she's not completely broken, she's not cynical, she misses Kanan, she misses her family dynamic, but she still carries that with her, and she's thriving in her career. She's a great mom. And so like don't be afraid to let female characters do both. They can do all the things. We can do all the things. We do it every day.
And they can be messy. Like, dude, let them be messy. Let them be like, you know what? I don't want to deal with this little kid today. You know, like it's fine, you know. Like
Chasna Chaddock. Oh, great character.
Give me the episode.
They don't have to be like extremely. Don't make women to be like, oh my God, they're walking this line and they're like so good and she's a great mother because no, let her be like, I need a break from this dude today, and you know what, I don't want to do laundry today, like things like that. We have to normalize that. We don't have to be put on a pedestal when it comes to things like that.
Give me the episode where Hera leaves Jason with Chopper and takes the ghost out for a joyride because she's so tired.
Like, dude, get him. I need a break.
Literally.
I mean, Chopper though, I don't think she would do it.
Maybe Zeb and Callus.
I mean, that's why Afra's so cool, because Homegirl is messy in the best way.
Yeah. Her experiences running around the galaxy with Sana are just hilarious. Just magical. All right. So, yeah. Well, so what do you guys want to communicate to? I didn't hear anything from Danielle or Meeks. Yeah.
Well, I guess I could. I've had some thoughts recently about what I would communicate to the fandom. I wrote them down.
Let's go.
Actually, is that I feel so because I'm fairly new to Star Wars TikTok. I've only been on for the past I think 4 months or 5 months, whatever. Wow. And one thing I've noticed that I felt like I was being kind of insane in thinking this, but I've seen other women voice this as well, is that it always seems that people don't think about how they communicate their comments to women versus how they do to men on social media. And so even though someone might be trying to be helpful, or they might think they're being helpful, it comes across as really condescending in a way that I don't think they would word that if I was a man. Mm-hmm. And it feels like the assumption when people come into a woman's comment section is that we don't know what they know already. And if we don't say it in the video, then that means that we don't know it. And to me, it gets annoying, because it's like, I don't think that I know everything, and I don't need people to think that I know everything. But sometimes they're really like big details that, of course, I know that. Like, I'm gonna know that, and I never see those types of comments most of the time in men's comment section. And so it's that type of thing. It's just consideration when you're talking to a woman about Star Wars, and think maybe before you press send on that comment, would I say this if she were a man? And if the answer is no, or if it might even be close to no, then maybe just keep scrolling. Don't comment.
Love it. Absolutely love it. How about you, Meeks?
I also wrote a bunch of things down.
Let's go.
So the first thing that came to my mind was, like, if a girl likes Star Wars, this is kind of related to what Danielle's been saying, like, men feel the need to question, like, prove it. Prove you're a Star Wars fan. Name 3 facts about some obscure male character.
Revan. Always Revan. Revan.
It's always Revan. Or Star Killer.
Yeah, oh, Star Killer, yes.
Oh my god.
And it's like, why? And Camilla and I talked about this also. The other thing is, women are fetishized. Like, oh, you like Star Wars? You're a good girl. How do I get a girl like you? Like, no.
You don't.
Well, now you don't.
Exactly.
Well, now you don't.
Precisely.
I made the mistake of putting a Star Wars quote in my dating profile.
For real. What else? Okay. I might not say this well, but sometimes I think being a content creator, sometimes something that I see myself and other female creators do, I just wonder if we are treating content creation like a business. How do we get the most views, the most interaction, get invited to premieres, get a promo box, get a book in advance? We have to think about the audience. Who is a loud majority of the Star Wars audience? Men. What do I need to do to create content to get those interactions, to make content that men like? And I think then we're missing out on this content about women in Star Wars, or the things that we enjoy. Why are we just like crafting our content for men? Why are we gearing all this content for men? And it's super frustrating to me. I'm gonna say this. I have seen a lot of my friends talking about Queen's Hope, but I have seen, mostly on Twitter, a lot of hype about Brotherhood. Yeah. And I ask myself, like, why? Why is that? Why is they're both books. They're both about characters who are beloved. Like, why is Queen's Hope not being talked about by a lot of women and a lot of men and a lot of non-binary creators? Like, why?
I think that also goes back all the way back up to Lucasfilm. I mean, and I know that like for a certain extent it's marketing synergy. They've really like branded this year as like Obi-Wan's year. I get it. But like, I know exactly when Brotherhood is coming out. I know when Padawan is coming out 4 months in advance. I didn't know that they pushed Queen's Hope twice or whatever. Yeah. And that goes all the way up to Lucasfilm. Like there are projects that they care more about, and those are projects that are catered to men. And like, I don't know how to fix that other than like women. Like, I think we just have to like, we have to be like, we're here. We like the things we like. And this is a lucrative option for you.
I was pissed when I got pushed back, but that's just me.
I was so mad.
Just one thing with like Queen's Hope is just, and this is something that I've said forever concerning Padmé, is how Padmé is basically forgotten in Star Wars, period. Like, we don't get any mentions of her like that. I mean, now we do because we get in the book and stuff, but then that's it. Disappeared. There's no mentions of her and in other medias or anything. And I personally very much that upsets me very much. To me, like my personal opinion, Padme is the most important Star Wars character. And maybe she's not, but she is a very big part of the story, one of the most important parts of the stories. And I don't like that we don't get anything past basically the prequels and some of the comics, but it has to do with Vader. Like we can't just get her, and then all we have is these 3 books now after the prequels, and that's basically it. And I've always just liked the fact that they just left her out like that and just basically, okay, yeah, she was somebody's mother and that was it. They don't even mention her when it comes to the rebellion, knowing that she was basically like one of the main persons that sparked the start of the conversation. Like, why is she not being also honored in that when it comes to the rebellion and stuff? So of course, if there's not talk like that, nobody's gonna hype this book unless it's it's Padme fans, and it shouldn't be like that. So yeah.
Is it weird to anyone else that there wasn't even like a discussion of sending one of the kids to the Naberries or
I know.
I think like going off of what you were saying, Thea, is that, and this is like partly also like what I would like to say to the fandom, 2 parts, is that like I think there's I like agree with everything that's been said, and the fact that like, oh, we need to keep like marketing stories about women. The thing that frustrates me is that why is it only ever women talking about women? Why don't I ever see any men, any male creators talking about women? The only time I ever see men talking about women is to prove that they're one of the good ones because they're defending Rey Skywalker, and that is it.
Or because it's Women's History Month.
Exactly. Thank you. Why is
I
it
felt
all
personally called out.
It's everyone. It's everyone.
Yeah, and so it just like it really, really, really makes me upset that I mean, Rhonda said it earlier that like women are a genre of Star Wars, and like that's not okay because there are a lot of, I mean, I made a video for women's, like people talk about we need more women representation, and I made a video for International Women's Day that is like a bunch of women, and there are in this video over 100 screenshots of women. There are over 100 and counting more women in this fandom that can be celebrated and that should be celebrated, and that aren't just Rey, Padme, Leia, Jin, Ahsoka. Those are 5 women, and there are so many others that should be celebrated, and it should not be just up to women to celebrate them and to highlight them and to get and to have those women like take place on your platform. So this is like to men listening, if you are a content creator, like make space for women on your platforms. Raise up women's voices, let women take space, because women are often told to not take space. So let them take space in your places, and you take a step back so that women can be heard in a way, because women are naturally going to be heard differently than you. So make space for them. And then I also want to switch and say, like, just want to address the gals and non-binary pals. Like, y'all, I see you. I feel you. I know your pain. Like I am so sorry that we are living in a time and are in the Star Wars fandom when it is hard for us to exist in this fandom, when it is hard for us to talk about the characters we love and to put out that love and be met with so much criticism and so much negativity about the characters that we love, and specifically the women that we love. And that is really, really, really hard. But I want to encourage you that the work that you're doing to celebrate these characters and the work that you're doing to make Star Wars a safer space for the fandom is not going unnoticed, and it's not it's not thankless work, because there are kids coming up right now who are going to get to come into a Star Wars fandom that is going to take care of them, and that is going to love them, and is going to accept them and include them in a way that maybe we didn't get to be included. And so that doesn't even just go to women. That goes for like all underrepresented groups. That goes for people of color. That goes for queer people. That we are making spaces for other people to not go through what we're going through. And it really sucks, and it's really, really hard work. And I wish we didn't have to deal with it. But there will be a day, I firmly believe it, when that sense of negativity is dimmed and dulled, and that sting of hate is almost gone, and only the light of the rebellion and the resistance lives on.
For
That
light
was
and life.
beautifully put.
Yes.
I love it.
That was
Yeah.
so pretty. I love that.
What's what Rose said? They win by making us think we're alone. But there are more. And I love how Amber says, "I'm so happy to be in a time when we can find each other. That wasn't a thing when I was young.
Yeah.
We're creating something better." And yeah, me doing like this podcast it's only like it's a stopgap. It's very small, but if I can get you guys in front of other people, and then other people will invite you on, and you guys find each other, and we're just trying to make a movement, Hopefully, well, yeah, I have no doubts, because I've already seen it make a change. I've already seen acceptance of a lot of things happen faster than I've ever seen it happen before. And so I think, a little bit at a time, definitely not there yet, but yeah, keep letting us know how we can improve.
But I think
keep
there's a
trying.
reason why I think a lot of that's one of I feel that it's the fanboys are pushing back so hard is because we are starting to be seen now. We are starting to, be heard now. And they don't like that. They feel it's like, whoa, wait, you guys are just supposed to be the cute Leia loving Padmé ones, whatever, just cute, and we're the strong. This is the fandom for us, because that was all like the stupid always trope of nerd stuff is for guys. The girls were never into nerdy stuff. And now that they see that we're coming in full force, it's like, whoa, no, wait, why are you invading my space? Like, well, bro, too bad. You can go. You can either get with it or just go away. We don't need you at all.
I think the argument that there's so many women and so many insert marginalized community here, in this fandom, that they're like, they weren't here 10 years ago. And I'm like, no, they were always here. We've just stopped staying in the sidelines. We've stopped letting you control this narrative. We've stopped accepting less. And so yes, it is a really dark time. It's a dark time in general. But it's a hard place. Fandom spaces are really difficult for marginalized communities. But I think that like Tia said, we're making a genuine effort to make them safer spaces, and it's working when people start pushing back. And all you have to do is just push back harder. And kind of adjacent to what we were talking about before, but I think we also don't give female female fans credibility. So this has happened to me a lot, where I'll post a comment or something, and somebody will be like, actually, and I'm like, no, actually, here's all the reasons why I know what I'm talking about. And then they still won't believe me. But then a male creator or a male fan will be like, oh no, this is why. And it's the same thing that I just said, but that carries more credibility. And so I think it's just for people to just be more conscious that we know what we're talking about. There's nothing different from what I'm saying towards what else is saying. And so when men come in, and I'm like, it's great that you're really you want to help out, but less of no, actually it's this, or more of no, actually she's right, and you're wrong, so I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Yeah. I mean, thank you guys again for all coming out. This was an awesome conversation. I've enjoyed this a lot, and I'm always left with a lot of stuff to consider. So I appreciate that. Let's
Put it
go.
in your book. Put it in your book.
I'm trying to. I've found that in general, all of my favorite protagonists have like always been women, and so like it's been tough for me in like trying to write stuff because I'm like I don't feel like I'm up to it. So I'm learning little bits and pieces and like reading the books and stuff you guys recommend. But yeah, that being said, let's go around the room one last time and have everyone say once again where we can find you and your amazing content. Also let us know if any closing thoughts, anything that we've missed, any additional messages. Just one more time for cleanup. And I will start with Tia.
Oh, sorry. All right, guys. So again, my TikTok handle is my name here, Star Wars Tia, or Kari Skywalker on Instagram. And final thoughts, just listen, guys, and this is for the men. We're here, and we're not going anywhere. I think you guys should appreciate that we're here, and that you can have more fun joining in the fun in a safe manner, in a respectful manner, and this fandom could become the most amazing thing in the world. Just, you got to put in the work, you got to put in the thought and the respect. That's what I would say.
I honestly feel bad for the toxic people because we're over here just vibing. You know what I
mean? Dude, like we have so much fun with everything. We have valid criticisms about things, but we also we enjoy it. So
it takes so much more energy to hate something than to like something.
Absolutely.
That's it.
And how about you, Benali?
So not on TikTok, but I am on Instagram at Benali912. And my closing thought is just to listen to more women, let them air their grievances. Don't tell them they're being ridiculous. Don't kind of minimize their struggles. No, don't what about them. And this effort to include more women in the conversation shouldn't end when March ends. On April 1st, keep going.
Absolutely. And Meeks?
I am Fangirl Meeks on TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. And I think my closing remarks would be, we need to be allies in every single way. For myself as a white person, I need to be listening to and uplifting Black, Indigenous, people of colors, voices, people who don't look like me, people who don't love like me, people who don't have the same mindset as me, the same abilities as me. I want to encourage everyone to do the same. Listen to people who are different from you, uplift those voices of marginalized groups, and it's gonna give us a lot of joy, a lot of empathy for each other, and it'll only make us better, and Star Wars better, and the community better. So
appreciate it, and thank you for also mentioning differently abled. I personally have a problem with not putting the captions on my videos, and I don't know why. I forget. I just post it, and I'm like, damn it, I'll do it. And then it's so small, but it helps. There's always things to just consider. Danielle.
Yeah, so I'm written in the Star Wars on TikTok and written in the SW on Instagram. And I guess my last thing to say is that, this doesn't just go for when you're creating content about women in Star Wars, but also any marginalized group. Remember that those people don't owe you anything when you're creating that content. You shouldn't be doing it for the views. You shouldn't be doing it for the likes. You should be doing it to get that information out there and to show your support and you shouldn't expect something in return from those people when you do that. I know that that goes for everything, like I said, not just when you're creating content for women, but if it's during Black History Month or during Pride, things like that. It should be because you genuinely want to create that content and spread the word.
Absolutely. And last but not least, Camilla.
Yes, I'm Camilla again. You can find me on TikTok, a couple places, Boricua Wiki and Open Circle Fleet as well. And then also check out Beings of the Galaxy, my Star Wars narrative podcast. The episodes specifically, we have Chaco's episode, Finding Balance and Mysterious Love. And then Meegs' episode is The Young Adventurer. And then also I want to highlight another episode that I wrote that's called Hollows of the Galaxy. And that one is actually very on theme for Women's History Month. So definitely check that one out. But just listen to all of them. They're a lot of fun. Anyway, last thought, I want to reiterate what I said earlier about if you have always been included, you don't understand how painful exclusion can be. And taking a moment to try and understand what people who have been excluded from the conversation are going through, and how they feel, is important to building empathy and helping us understand each other in this world. And yeah, just because a story has a character who doesn't look like you, who doesn't act like you, who doesn't move in the world as you do, who doesn't come from the same background as you, does not mean that there isn't value to find in those stories. So specifically in terms of this conversation, for men, women have had to find themselves in male-centric stories for all of time. There's no reason you can't find yourselves in stories about women. So keep that in mind. Just because something wasn't necessarily made exactly for you doesn't mean that there's not value for you to find in those stories. And just, women. That's it. Women.
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 If not, Luminara will judge you. Luminara will be judging you. Okay?
I love it.
I love her.
Amazing. Thank you guys once again. I appreciate it so much. I want to also thank all the channel subscribers here, Brian with the beard, Lee-Wan Kenobi, X-Core Gamer Skills, Jordy Jedi, Master Yoro, Jedi Master DePaul, Star Wars Lawyer, and Xanatos, and all these amazing people hanging out in chat. We got JJ Cat Lady, we got Rhonda with the book. Check out Rhonda's podcast. I can't remember what it's called. Rhonda, say the name of your podcast in the chat if you if you don't mind. We have Vin Skywalker hanging out here. We have Monty Montgomery Harris, who was on last week. Lots of fun talking to him. Chris, Star Wars Lawyer. We have Escape Reality Films, St. Pat, Miss Aggie, Amber Medina. Just phenomenal group coming out here. I appreciate all of you guys because I love making content and having these conversations. So we're just gonna keep them going, and also we're gonna try to do them live in person at Celebration for whoever's coming. So please let us know. We'll make the thing happen.
Have fun, guys.
Yeah, have fun. I'm not jealous at all.
You'll be with us in spirit.
I want to be there though.
All right, everyone. Have a wonderful evening, and may the Force be with you always.